welcome along. I'm not sure if it's the evening or the morning. It's all dependent, isn't it? So nevertheless, you're all here to talk about some Dharma, listen to some Dharma, to talk about, to try and understand it. We can begin by taking refuge together, setting a good motivation for doing that, and then engaging in the preliminary practices. So let's get ourselves ready to do that. So begin by making yourself quite comfortable in your seat. Try and ensure that your back is straight and your shoulders are relaxed. That your hands are placed in a comfortable position. You can either keep your eyes open or you can close them. With the eyes sort of either semi-open or closed, continue to breathe normally and naturally. And while you're breathing normally and naturally, become aware of the subtle movements that are taking place within your body. So have the mind sort of focused on those subtle movements, and you continue to breathe normally and naturally. And allow the body to be present and to relax. And with the body relaxed and the mind focused, take a few moments to consider how lucky we all are, how fortunate we all are to still be alive today. So not only do we find ourselves living, alive, but we find ourselves alive within the body of a human being. We are human. And we have the intelligence of a human being. And with this intelligence, we can determine the meaning of the life we have. So think about what you want to accomplish with your life. What is it you want to do with this life you have? Now, whatever meaning you've given to life, add to it this. Decide that you also wish to increase your compassion, your wisdom, and your skill in working with yourself and others. We wish to do this to either bring about a higher realm rebirth, liberation, or enlightenment. We recognize that either of these three goals will depend upon you knowing what to abandon and what to accomplish. What to abandon and what to accomplish is dependent upon you knowing that. And that requires a teacher or knowledge. It will also depend upon a supporting community. So of those three goals, fortunate human rebirth or higher realm rebirth, liberation or enlightenment, decide to aim at enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. This is the highest goal, and it subsumes the two lesser goals of liberation and higher rebirth. Think, I want to become enlightened to bring about the welfare of all living beings. And I'm going to do that by relying upon the Buddha and his teachings and his community. And then join me in saying, I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. In response to this prayer of ours, lights and nectars pour out of the heart of the Buddha. Is it the space in front of it and above us? This light and nectar pours down and washes over your body, penetrates the body and cleanses the mind of yourself and over all beings surrounding you. Find that every obstacle and hindrance to refuge is cleared away. And you have conviction in the Buddha, his teachings, and the community. With this conviction, bring to mind all sentient beings and direct towards them these four boundless thoughts. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is without suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. In response to this prayer of ours, again, lights and nectars pour out of the heart of the Buddha, washing over you and over all the beings surrounding you. So all the negative states, all the states that prevent these four boundless thoughts are washed away. So indifference, the wish to harm, jealousy, biased states of mind, they're all absent now. And in their place is this great love and kindness, great compassion, great joy, and great equanimity. Boundless, encompassing all beings. Recollect the merit field above you, all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Rejoice in their presence. And then say, reverently I prostrate with my body, speech and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own and others' merits to the Great Enlightenment. And then to let go of any clinging that we might have to the virtue that we've created. Recollect emptiness. That whatever does exist does so dependently and is empty of intrinsic nature. With that knowledge, have everything appear as a mandala, wonderful pure land. I think that you're going to offer this to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas in the space above you. You say, this ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnayatayami. So we've released the offering. The Buddha has accepted and he smiles at us with delight. We look up into his eyes. We see that we are accepted by him. His compassion extends to us. We're embraced by his wisdom and we find ourselves relaxing, feeling completely at ease. And then an emanation of the Buddha leaves his heart, it moves through space, and it comes to abide above the crown of your head, facing in the same direction you are. The emanation descends, enters the crown of your head, comes down through your body, and stops at your heart. The radiance of the Buddha begins to expand, filling your body with light. The light pervades your mind, goes out through the pores of your body, and it begins to fill the 10 directions of space. And wherever there are beings within space, they are touched by that light and utterly transformed into the fully awakened state. And from the 10 directions of space, the light begins to withdraw, and it re-enters your heart. You feel the seat beneath you. You know you are breathing. You feel embodied once again. You accept that this meditation was one of imagination, but it has imprinted the mind with either causes or conditions to produce enlightenment. So now I think, okay, I've done something really valuable today. I've created the causes. I've tried to bring about as many of the conditions as possible to bring about my enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now I'm going to enhance this practice with the study of the Dharma. I'm going to talk about it, discuss it. I'm going to try and make it clearer to my mind, and I'm going to accomplish enlightenment for the benefit of others. And then now breathe in through your nostrils and exhale through your mouth. Allow your eyes to flutter open. And move your body in whichever way you'd like to. Do you feel present but at ease? Okay. So this is our third class, and so we've covered some material already. So you know that empathy is not compassion. We talked about different types of empathy. I think it was emotional, cognitive, and compassionate empathy. Neither of these are actually the compassion we're talking about. So we are compassionate people already. We have what we call ordinary compassion. Compassion for ourselves, compassion towards those close to us. And this ordinary compassion that we possess since we were born, this compassion will be the foundation for greater compassion, great compassion. It is this foundation because we can actually sift out expectations and attachments from that ordinary compassion, and then we can build on this compassion. Because Ordinary compassion doesn't require us to do any work in a way. It doesn't require us to cultivate anything. It's already there. But this great compassion that we're trying to develop, that actually requires a lot of thinking and then a lot of mental work. It's not a natural thing. So how do we get rid of how do we sift out these expectations and attachments from our ordinary compassion so that we have a good foundation to build upon? Well, we use reasoning. It's through using our intelligence that we have at present and the ability to reason that we can see that these expectations and attachments we have keep our compassion ordinary and keep it sort of going up and down. We still have compassion, but it's biased, and it just stays that way. We can change it using reasoning. Now, I've come across everything I've basically said through reading this particular book. And I've taken most of the class material from this book by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Tupten Chodron. Now today, I will talk about how to develop this great compassion based on the 7 causes and effect meditation. So we're going to take it up through the five stages, I think it is. We've got 4 and then the 5th. So we'll end up with great love. Now I'm just going to sort of say a little bit about that and stop there. And next week we'll take it from great love and then this great compassion and put them together. Now, Arya Nagarjuna said that the fruit of enlightenment, solely for others' welfare, grows from the sprout of the mind of enlightenment, which has a root of firm compassion. And so this is what Conqueror's children cultivate. So when they talk about the fruit of enlightenment, they're really talking about being a Buddha, having the 2 bodies of a Buddha. And having these 2 bodies, having a mind and a body, a physical body and the mind of the Buddha, actually comes from having a mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta, a sincere wish to accomplish that goal. But that sincere wish to accomplish the goal of enlightenment for all sentient beings comes out of this great compassion. And those who wish to become fully awakened beings, Buddhas, to have these 2 bodies, it's this great compassion that is cultivated. They cultivate great compassion. The great compassion leads to the mind of enlightenment, and the mind of enlightenment leads on to Buddhahood. So I want to now introduce you to the 7 cause and effect instructions and show you how this compassion can become the basis for it, but it also follows on from this mind of enlightenment. We've got these 7 cause and effect instructions, and this is what it's sort of made up of. So we've got these first 3 steps here. And it's going to lead about to this great affection that we have towards all beings. So it starts by we recognize all beings as having been our kin or our mothers in particular. We have to recollect their kindness, and then we resolve to repay the kindness. So these 3 here, 1, 2, and 3, they generate this affectionate love. And so we're going to be talking about these 4 here today. This affectionate love is a foundation for this great compassion. Then the great compassion leads us to cultivating this mind for enlightenment, a mind directed toward awakening, what we call bodhicitta. Bodhicitta combined with the wisdom to practice correctly and engage in the 6 perfections and the 2 stages of Tantra, we end up having a body and a mind that is of a Buddha. And now the compassion doesn't require any effort at all. But we still have the compassion, and now it's automatically, spontaneously, and effortlessly directed towards all sentient beings. And we are trying to help them. So I sort of hope that what's clear going on here, we've got these 4 causes that produce great compassion. We have the great compassion. Now the great compassion acts as a cause. The 4 causes produce the effect of great compassion. Now we have great compassion. Now this effect becomes a cause for the mind of enlightenment. Then the mind of enlightenment becomes a cause for Buddhahood. And this great compassion, as you know, we've pointed out the last 2 weeks, it's the point behind it is to put an end to suffering in whichever way it's most beneficial, whether you can remove a condition or a cause. So its aspect is to always allay suffering, to stop suffering, to put an end to it, to help others, to protect others, to help others not suffer. And we begin with ourselves. Like I said, its function is always to find that suffering is unbearable. You see, so it's not a cruel act. It's an act of kindness. It's an act of protectiveness. Its mere cause is to see that there are sentient beings suffering. They're in distress. And when we're successful at extending compassion, it reduces hurt, harm. But when we fail, then we become personally distressed. So when we're extending compassion to others, trying to bring about this great compassion, we can say we are persons who are intent on the other's welfare. We see their distress, we wish to allay it. We're concerned about their welfare. So when we talk about this, to cultivating this great compassion, there's 2 sort of things we need to do. So the first is to foster a sense of impartiality. We can only do this by overcoming attachment and our animosity towards all, our natural attachment and animosity that we have towards others. We need to overcome that. Now we can do that through the practice of what we call equanimity. We're here, what we're trying to do is to remove the bias which produces attachment and animosity. And secondly, so we've got to do this equanimity, and then we've got to also nurture affection for others. And we can do that through those initial 4 points of the 7 cause and effect instructions. So we're trying to transcend or overcome the natural biases that arise through the attachment and aversion. Place them in a sort of even mind, and then on that basis nurture kindness, bring about a sense of kindness, build on it. Does this seem straightforward enough? So far? Might not be so easy to do, but it seems easy enough to understand, isn't it? You go, okay, it's sort of like the example of gardening, isn't it?
Stop the share. Idiots might go to say stop the share.
We have a couple of students here that do some gardening, and actually one of them sent me put up a post the other day that said you start off with really good soil. Make sure you start off with good soil. So this is like this equanimity. So when you do garden, of course, you have got to have this good soil. And what you do is you remove it, any weeds, stones, all that sort of stuff. You get a nice surface, and then you put the seeds in. So it's the same with us. We just got to remove these sort of biases. Again, that requires reasoning, because that's sort of how it's done, isn't it? We've got to think about why am I biased?
So, Eddie, I like this gardening example because otherwise you put all this effort in and get very little results if you don't prepare the soil first. So this is kind of showing how we can get really good results if I suppose, if we're methodical.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be sort of methodical, and we sort of, like start at the beginning. There's a beginning to this. So it's just sort of like getting them, like the soil ready to put in the crop and have a good crop. So for us, it's like, well, we've got to get the mind ready. If you sort of remember, if you look at the Buddha's teachings, in one way, it's quite simple. You can just go, there's all these things you've got to get rid of, and then there's these other things you've got to cultivate. So to use the gardening example again, metaphor again, isn't it? So you've got to get rid of the natural bias of aversion and attachment, and also the indifference. So we've got to prepare the mind, so to speak. And then on that basis, then we start building up the good qualities. And as you find as you go along, you don't remove, you do the best to get the ground ready. But as you go along, you'll find, oh, this little stone, I didn't know that was there, because it'll arise, And then we have to sort of work again. So let's have a look at our next. Does anybody else have anything to say? Anybody else would like to ask anything? Barb, Sue? Does it seem straightforward enough? Reasonable, at least, isn't it? Seems reasonable. So we've got to foster and nurture. So here's a great scholar practitioner from the Nyingma tradition, Jigme Limpa, and he's describing this sense of impartiality or equanimity that we need to develop. And you can see here, he says, impartiality is freedom from attachment and hostility. When sides and factions are all seen as equal. When enemy and friend and neither are all treated with an even-handed kindness. He says, so we should practice these four attitudes, remembering that all is without true existence. So everything up to this last little part here, all is without true existence, is all the method part. And then we have this, trying to get us to remember the wisdom aspect of it. But none of this has any true existence. And in fact, when we do that, I found that when we use this knowledge of lacking true existence, we are all equal. We are all the same. None of us has true existence. None of us truly exists. So in other words, none of us have, if we looked at our body as like being a plane, an aeroplane, right? There's no pilot in there driving the plane. All sentient beings are the same like that. So, and the body itself, and the plane is not the pilot. The pilot is not the plane. We're not the body's not us. We're not the mind is not us. How do we exist then? In mere name, we're imputed to the body and mind. The name I is given to the body and mind. Everyone's like that. Everyone's like that. So we're all equal in being that way, that we're mere imputations upon valid basis. So although it's quite true that we all lack, this true existence, all these people, ourselves included, who are without true existence, wish to be happy and wish to be free from suffering. That's also, we're equal in that way. So let's do a short meditation on developing equanimity. So again, just get yourself comfortable in the seat. You keep your eyes open or closed. Then I'll lead you through these 4 or 5 steps. Okay, so first of all, bring to mind a stranger. Do you have any attachment or aversion towards a stranger, someone that you don't know? If you do have, try to release it, let it go. So you don't, let go of your overestimation of the stranger. So that you have just a difference thing, you don't have indifference, you don't have attachment, you don't have aversion. You don't like them, but you don't have fear or anger towards them. So if you don't have this attachment or aversion towards a stranger, you've actually released it right now. You're free of it right now towards a stranger. Then bring to mind a friend. Focus on a friend. Then recollect or recall the instability of friendship. So attachment towards friends is unsuitable. Because friendship is unstable. So release attachment towards friends. Instead, recollect equanimity. Recollect how they're just the same as you, and they wish to be happy and they wish to be free from suffering. Now bring to mind somebody that you have sort of hostile feelings towards, somebody that you don't like, makes you feel uncomfortable. Then recall how relationships change. Think that your hostile feelings towards this person can actually change. So it doesn't make any sense at all to develop a very rigid image of someone. It makes no sense at all to develop this image and to hold on to hostility. Because relationships change. So this reminds us that no one is a friend, a stranger, or an enemy forever. There are no forever friends, forever strangers, forever enemies. So let those ideas go. Now recollect the benefits of equanimity. Recollect that if you just hold them to be the same as persons who wish to be happy and wish to be free from suffering, just like yourself, So it's quite right for them to seek ways to bring about that happiness, to free themselves from suffering, just as it's quite right for you to do the same. So we have the equal right to put an end to suffering and to generate the positive mental states that we call happiness. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I'll develop equanimity. And then breathe in through your nostrils. Exhale through your mouth. And allow your eyes to open if they're closed. Now, I just want to say a few sort of interesting things about equanimity. So when we're developing this, we've got this impartial equanimity, right? We're trying to develop a feeling of equal emotion regarding others. But then on the other side, there's another type of equanimity called equalizing self with others. And this is a feeling that there's no difference between ourselves and others. Now, developing equanimity in either of these two ways, it doesn't require treating everybody equally in all situations. So the conventional roles and the relationships still remain. And our trust is given on sort of skillful discernment, isn't it? It's like, we don't trust a stranger with our banking details, whereas we might trust our partner with them. So those sort of conventionalities, it's like, we have a much more intimate relationship with our partner than we do with a stranger. So we think, I've got to make this equal. So the same way, I'm related to my intimate partner, I've got to do this with everybody. It's not that type of equality. So we're just trying to, this equanimity is to sort of foster a sense of respect and care for everyone. We respect others as we respect ourselves. We care for others as much as we care for ourselves. What's our deepest care? To be free from suffering and to be happy. We have the right to try to do that, and so does everybody else. Yeah, so we don't treat everyone identically in all situations. So from the book by His Holiness, he says, this distinction is important as it allows us to navigate practical interactions while still maintaining an open-hearted concern for all beings. So equanimity doesn't negate differences in treatment of others, but encourages an unbiased and respectful approach. So it's trying to foster a sense of fairness and care extending to everyone. Miffy, yeah?
I just got to say that it's taken me ages to get my head around the difference between these two because, for a long time I just thought equanimity was equanimity and know that there weren't different types. But this one, the equalizing, like in that meditation, friend, enemy, stranger, I was quite familiar with and could do. But this one of then self and others, that's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah, that's right. And I have to say this other one, the second one here, I find it's quite easy in terms of thinking about it, but it's a much it's another level up.
It's another level up, and it kind of happens when there's big major world events, like when I'm hearing about the fires in Canada or all those various things. That's when there's an extreme event, then it's easier to do, but just day to day, gosh.
We get so again, these have to be cultivated. This is what just like you're saying, it's like, yeah, gosh. And so for me, it's and for yourselves too, I hope it's a very easy way to forgive others' bad behavior. and perhaps you also wish to be better than what you are. But so the only reason for that is just you haven't cultivated it. So it requires the cultivation of a way of thinking. Otherwise, it's just like we say, if it's only when we meet up with extremes. So when we were watching the other night the fires in Canada, go, oh my God, we had them here too. So that, people have this great fear. People lose their homes, their photos, a lot of personal stuff. It's traumatic. It's traumatic for the Australians. It's traumatic for the Canadians. It'll be traumatic wherever you are if you find yourself overrun by a fire. So there you have this, wow, there's no difference between myself and anybody who finds themselves in a fire. So we'll do one more, another quick meditation on equanimity. So again, just get yourselves ready, sit up, keep your eyes open or closed, whatever's easy. At this time, I want you to imagine 3 people in front of you. And these people are, first of all, a dear person, somebody you hold dearly, to whom you are very attached to, but from whom you don't want to be separated. The next person is some sort of person you have a great deal of difficulty with, a person whom you find it easy to feel anger towards, resentment towards, and you're a bit fearful of also. So you've got a dear person and you've got the difficult person. And next to that person, the difficult person, a stranger, a complete stranger. And you feel quite sort of apathetic towards them, you don't know them. Now focus on the dear person, the person you hold close, and ask yourself, why am I so attached to this person? So there aren't any right or wrong answers here. The answer is just what it is. Just listen to what your mind says. Again, why am I so attracted to this person? Why am I so attached to this person? And then focus on that difficult person and ask yourself, why do I have so much anger, resentment, and belligerence towards this person? Why am I afraid of them? Again, no judgment. You just allow the thought to come up. It's not an intellectual thing. It's just what happens. Why am I afraid of this person? Why do I have so much anger, resentment, and belligerence towards them? Now focus on the stranger and ask yourself, why do I feel apathetic and indifference towards this person? So now, in observing your responses towards a difficult person, the attached person, and a stranger, what word did you hear repeatedly? What word was the most common word that came up? Okay, just in your own time, just breathe in deeply through your nostrils. Exhale through your mouth. Allow your eyes to flutter open. Okay. It's interesting. I'm just looking at it again on the screen here and go, I'm asking myself, why am I so attached to this person? And the first thing I say to myself is, I blah, 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 blah. I like them because this and that, right? I've got all these reasons. And even as I'm saying to you, I'm going, yeah, I've got all these reasons. I like them because this and that, right? And then if I say about the enemy, why am I so scared of that bloke, that person? I go, well, because I. So I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but the most common word, the word you hear repeatedly is the word I. I am involved in this process. And so again, so we classify people as friends who are worthy of attachment, enemies or difficult people who deserve our anger, and strangers whom we normally ignore, based on how they relate to me. A stranger, a difficult person, a person I'm attached to is all about me, my relationship to them. And then what will happen is that we'll believe our opinion about our dear friend, our enemy, our difficult person, and our stranger. So I'm pretty sure none of you, when you did this exercise, made stuff up about them. You actually thought, now what I'm saying to myself is true. Like, they are my friend for these reasons, and they are my enemy for these reasons. So this idea of thinking that it's true, we're grasping at our conceptual images, our ideas of the person, this is all true. Well, you always see, if you question that, it's always on how they relate to me. Our dear friend is dear to me, and I have my reasons for that. My enemy, I'm afraid of them. I don't like them and all these things. It's about me. Because I'm sure if you ask that person's mother, are you afraid of your son as much as I am? They'd probably go, are you kidding? I love my son. He's wonderful. So there's this funny thing that happens, isn't there? But what's trying to be shown to us here is that our views are very subjective, are very biased. In fact, I remember for myself, because I was a person that really thought, friends, enemies, and strangers, that was the box they're in, and they stay like that. It doesn't change. So, of course, when I thought like that, I didn't change. But then I remember many years later when one of my friends asked me, why do you behave this way towards?
Stop the share, hun.
Why do you behave this way towards my wife? I've noticed that that when she says something, you sort of like back down really quickly. You don't hold your view. You don't like speak up, hold up. And I said no. I said yeah. I don't. And that was because of what I saw her do about, I don't know, maybe 15 years previously. She'd done this thing, and I just thought, right, that's who you are. She'd done this behaviour, and I just put her in the box and go, you're definitely not my friend. You treat my friends like, you treat my good friend like that. Whoa, I can't extend friendship towards you. So I told my friend who'd married her, right? She said to me, how come you do this, So I told him, and he told her, right? And then she came to me and said, that thing that happened so many years ago? And I knew John told her, right? So Yeah, I go, yeah. And she said, this is why I did it. Right? And I was just like, oh my God. And my mind immediately changed. So no longer was she like in the enemy box. Now, because I understood what she'd done, now I could be sort of friendly towards her. It was just because at that time she was suffering so much. She was a really hard place, you know, and I just thought, oh, that's how she always is. Well, but I was wrong. She was just really in pain at that time, and she took it out on her partner. You know, but then later on they got married. They've been together for a long time. But it was just the way I thought. I thought if you thought like this, if you behave like this, you're that person. That's the box I'm putting you in. And then, you know, discovering, more than 20, maybe 30 years later after this conversation and go, oh my God. You know, see, I don't know, you might have found yourself doing that yourself, you know, where people you used to call friends have done something to you and you thought, yeah, like a friend just doesn't, that's not a friend, right? So if they're not a friend, then they have to be an enemy. If enough time will go by, then they're a stranger to you. And what's sort of been pointed out here is this way we're sort of putting people into conceptual boxes, but in fact they don't actually exist like that. So how to put an end to that sort of boxing type thing, you know? That way of what we call, you know, grasping and putting them into an idea category and thinking that that's true. So Eddie's raised her hand. Yep.
Hello, Eddie.
Hi.
I've been struggling with this thought for a while, and in my mind, I just have some negative thoughts towards it because I think I just don't understand. Like when there's this talk about, enlightenment and being enlightened for yourself and then others, I kind of don't understand that. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean like you're reborn over and over and over again and you come into whatever body but you're still enlightened? Because I, I don't know, it sometimes I wonder, like, what if you don't want to? What if you don't want to come back and reincarnate body after body and continue, the karmic life? Like, I think I don't understand this part of things. Like, kind of makes me feel like I don't really want to. I just want to go. I just want, I don't know.
Sure.
It's selfish. And you're talking about compassion and you're talking about equanimity. And because the Buddha was so compassionate, like, has he come back? Is he back? Like, I'm so confused.
Okay. Well, that's okay. That's a good place to start with confusion, and those are very good questions, Annie. And I was saying, like, I couldn't possibly answer all those questions. They're so wide and deep in any sort of quick, short fashion. This, what you're going through is, first of all, I'll say it's entirely natural, and those questions have arisen for nearly anybody who starts, who is interested in what we call the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. So all I can suggest at present is to keep reading and studying as widely as possible, because your questions come down to some very a great deal of deepness. What I mean by that is it requires us knowing how things exist, like not just what a Buddha is, but how it exists, how things exist, and that's not easy to get your head around. And it's from there, once you sort of get your head around knowing how things exist, then you can sort of look at like what is a Buddha, and what is this thing called rebirth, and like how does it take place? So your questions are really valid and good ones, and I just can't answer it all right now. But I see Michael has his hand up, so perhaps he can help. So have a go, Mike.
Go, Michael.
Eddie, I really like that second meditation, and I agree with you on the first one where it says, the person I like, because they. But and had we done that second one, the person that I'm struggling with 3 days ago, I would have probably said because they. But early this morning or last night, I don't remember which one it was, something happened that kind of got me a little bit irritated. It really had nothing to do with this one person. But immediately, because I was irritated, I immediately switched my emotion and my anger towards that person.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking, okay, so what is it with me that's making that happen? And so that was interesting that for when we did that one. But the question that I really have is the third one, because while I will absolutely say that yes, in theory, I guess, and I'd like to say in reality, but I guess it's in theory, I have compassion for everyone that exists on the planet. In reality, I don't really give them a second thought unless unless something about them is sitting right in front of me.
Yeah.
Right. If somebody if somebody who's got a car broken down, I'll stop and help somebody. Right. But
Yeah.
when I'm driving past them on the freeway, if their car, if I'm driving faster than they are, which I usually am, and I'm passing people, I don't give them really a second thought unless, of course, they pull in front of me, and then I kind of like wince. And so it was interesting that how do you go from generically having compassion to really being mindful of all of those people, not all of the time, but at least some of the time.
Mhm. Well, I think that's what our next 4 or 5 points are going to talk about, Mike. Yeah, I mean, that's a natural thing that happens to you, to me, to most of us. And I keep coming back to this idea that we haven't like cultivated the knowledge of Dharma. It's not like we know, like intellectually, we read, we hear, we agree. And basically, it doesn't go much further than that. We might do the odd meditation like we did, a couple of minutes ago. But it's still like, it's still on the surface. There's a great, well, I thought it was a great analogy that they give in the presentation of the Tibetan Dharma. So it's like, they say our Dharma at present is like the froth on top of the beer. And I like that one because I go, yeah, the beer is this deep, but just on the top, it looks great. Right? It's got a lovely white froth, and oh, lovely, but it just blows off, doesn't it? No depth. So I think of myself like that often. I say, yeah, you don't have the depth because you haven't put the time in. You haven't cultivated. You read a lot, you like it, you agree with it, but boy, I've still got my bias, right? I still have these things. I'm still fearful of people. I still feel naturally attracted to others. That's all there. Of course it is. You haven't really worked with the ground yet. But I'll show you these next slides, Michael. I'll talk about like how to work with the ground, right? But again, we still have to cultivate it. You'll see it. Oh yeah, I know this. And we do, at least on the surface. So let's go back there. But Annie, those are great questions. And the only real thing I can say is it takes time, and it does require you to sort of, what my teacher always says is study. It's a study. And you'll need to think about it. So even if what I say, all I can say is, what I think might help you. But you'll need to do more than that. It requires more than just sort of hearing something or reading something. We need to do a bit more with it. We need to sort of contemplate it and then think about it deeply. So let's have a look now how to sort of cultivate the mind so that we can get up to this great compassion. You need to sort of turn the ground over. Okay, so we begin with this by first of all, let's look at the slide. By first of all, it's called recognizing your mothers. So, the larger heading is to go, okay, we've got to recognize that every living being has been a mother to us, has been a parent to us. That's our first stage. So, but to do that requires, you've got to, before you can even do that, isn't it? Now you've got to have a sort of understanding about what is rebirth. What is this thing called mind? So we've got to sort of know, well, in the nature of mind, that mind has a different continuums. There are different forms of mind. There's all of that to consider. Then there's a consider of like, who is the person, me, I, that is going to be reborn again and again and again and have all these different mothers? And how does that actually work? How does that take place? So you can sort of see, I think, that remember here we were talking about the Mahayana Dharma, right? We're aiming for this great goal of enlightenment. And we've got to work up to this great compassion. So, of course, this type of material is not done in the Pali tradition. We don't go recognize all sentient beings and so forth, because you don't have to develop great compassion within that system. But here we're trying to develop a compassion that embraces all beings, and we're going to take the responsibility to free them from suffering and its causes. Again, remember, that's not the goal in the Pali tradition. This is Mahayana Dharma. We've got to recognize all beings as our mothers. Now, this is not an easy thing to do. Many of us have great difficulties with our mothers, right? Our present mothers. So mothers is just an example. Right? So if you find, I really don't like my mother, I can't recognize that. Yes, Miffy?
I just find in this picture, it's really helpful, because if you just look at the amount of effort that animals put in to raise their young and how they'll put their own life on the line, just that in itself. I mean, there's so many more animals on the planet than there are human beings. So all of those animals have been my mother, not just as a human, but as animals as well. So that kind of, for me, it evens it out and puts the relationship that I had with this life mother into some kind of perspective.
Okay. So I would think, especially like if suppose I was you, Annie, right, and I saw something like this. I'm here. And it goes. It's asking me to recognize all sentient beings, every being, like these penguins and polar bears and things, at some stage in our vast evolution have been a mother to me. Like the person next door has been a mother to me. My own mother to me, of course, is a mother to me in this life, but then it says, not only has she been a mother to you in this life, but she's been a mother in countless lives. In fact, Michael, a person called Michael that I'm looking at on screen right now, in some other life, he was my mother. Miffy, who I'm in a relationship with right now, has, at some other stage, she was also my mother. This is what it's sort of asking us to take on. So I think naturally some questions must arise, right? It's like, how? How can everybody be my mother? How could that be possible? Then the next question might be, why do I need to recognize that? So this first bit requires a lot of knowledge, doesn't it, to go into it? So I can answer like the how. Like I said, that requires knowledge of knowledge of how we actually exist. That we're mere imputations upon valid basis. That everyone else is the same. In fact, all things are like that. But then we've got to get this idea of like what is a mind, and what is a continuum of mind, and what is this mind that goes on from life to life that I am imputed to. So we're going to get all that sort of sorted out, the how. But here's the why. The why is to inspire a sense of commonality and solidarity. we are trying to establish a sense of closeness with everyone. Now, like I said, so when we begin, when it says recognize that all beings have been your mother and you have difficulty with your mother, the idea is to find someone who has been affectionate towards you, someone who has cared for you. That might be a dog. If you maybe your life's so difficult and hard and really difficult, it might be some animal. But you have to find somewhere to start and go, well, that being there was once a mother to me. And then you've sort of got to go through. So you can see how, like I said before, I was saying, and ordinarily you'd come into this meditation and go, well, I don't really like my mother. But you think, I should have actually that should have been dealt with on the equanimity meditation before it, right?
So, Eddie, do we start with the mothers because that's like a shortcut to just assume that a shortcut to the one who we feel the warmest, closest towards? Like, so we start with this really warm, wonderful feeling.
Yeah, like I said, we've got to have a sense of warmth or closeness towards this person, and in this instance is called mother. So my own teacher, Khyentse Rinpoche, once said, we are attempting to develop a recognition that there is no sentient being who has never been our mother as a method to establish a sense of closeness with everyone. So in Asian traditions, it's like there's this natural sense of, it's more like a we or a thou, and it's the mother's often the center hole of the family. So it's the mother that gives birth to the child, that holds them, that gives them the milk, extends so much sort of kindness towards them, but helps them grow. So if any of you remember, years ago in Romania, when they came across the orphanages where all the children were, so, and there was something really wrong there, wasn't there? Those kids are really like,
Was a failure to thrive.
Yeah, and that failure to thrive was because of no mothering, no holding, no closeness. So these like human sentient beings were crippled. So this is why I was saying it's not, if you don't have a sense of closeness to your mother right now, and you can't sort of think of any, find someone else, somebody cared for you. And it's just saying, like, focus on that person and think, okay, that person cared for you. There's lots of people that cared for you. In fact, everyone has cared for you. In the same way this person has cared for you, everyone has cared for you. And then try and find that. So, but whatever the way it goes, you are going to have to come back to that. If you think, I have great difficulty to think about the mother, then you leave it to last, but you want to go over there. And like I said, you've got to bring in the wisdom, like what is a mother? Not just the function of the mother, how does the mother exist? Again, it's in mere name. If they were truly existently mothers, none of this would work. That would be an impossibility. So we've got to keep bringing in the idea of how do things exist, not only what exists, how do they exist? And why do I want to engage in these types of meditations? What am I trying to actually do here? So what we're trying to do here, like I said, is just to inspire a sense of commonality, solidarity. And in this next one, the next step is to just recognize that there are mothers, but to recognize their kindness. So the kindness how they do this is you focus on the kindness of like while you were being carried in the womb by the mother. Because no matter what you think about your mother, any form of happiness that you have, you can trace it back to, if I wasn't born, couldn't have happened. So recall the kindness of the mother, and you go like again, like why? Again, always it's how and why. How do I do that? Why am I doing that? What am I to do? We've got to ask ourselves these questions. When it seems like as reasonable as possible, we've got, okay, now I can become familiar with it. So please don't just stop there and go, wow, I've got it. I understand. Yep, it's gratitude, and move on. Because as we normally do, it's just like Michael was saying, you get in the car and all this is forgotten. You're just driving down the road and yet somebody gets in front of you, it's too slow. Gratitude is out the window. Right? It's just like, what's wrong with these people? Right? Yeah. So their natural biases come back. And again, if you go, I have these biases, well, it's because I haven't really worked on the equanimity deep enough. So you come to this gratitude. So there are basically 4 different topics you go to do this. They are the kindness of giving us this body, the kindness of protecting us from this life's dangers, the kindness of leading us in the path of the world, showing us how to get by in life, and the kindness of bearing many hardships and accumulating the negative karma for us. So if you think back over what your mother has done for you in this life, you'll see she's done all these things. And you might even notice you've done the same for your children. You would have got into arguments with the neighbours to protect your kids.
Yeah, Eddie, that's the one that really gets to me. That and especially if we have problematic relationships, that our parents, they just they're trying to do the best that they can, and often stuffing up left, right, and center, and it's like I am the condition for them to be making huge amounts of negative karma.
Yeah.
I mean, I find that so shocking, and it's not something I would have kind of thought of myself.
Yeah, so you'll see in Lama Zopa put out a book not too long ago about, it's just called Bodhicitta, but in that is these meditations. They're sort of going through how do we develop this great compassion that is necessary before we can have bodhicitta, or a mind of enlightenment. And so what I've tried to do is to just answer these really sort of basic questions: how, why, what. To get you there, and then we could sort of backtrack and see who said what. How do I get this sort of deeply inside me? So once we've been able to recall their kindness, the next step is to resolve to repay their kindness. So I'll put this up here. So some of you might recognize this picture. So this is a picture of a musician called Janis Joplin from the 70s. And you can see that she's got in her hand a bottle of Old Turkey. Right? So she loved that drink. But if you know anything about Janis Joplin, you know she's a wonderful singer, but quite unhappy. Difficult life. And people didn't treat her as kindly as they could have, that's for sure. Now, but suppose Janis Joplin was your mother, and you saw your mother sitting there like that, unhappy, with a bottle in her hand. I'm sure you'd want to do something about it. You want to try and make mum happy. So this is the idea, to inspire a sense of reciprocity of affection. We remember the kindness of mum, and we want to do the same. We want to be kind, repay that kindness. So again, from the book by His Holiness and Venerable Thupten Chodron, he says, the pivotal or core idea is that our gratitude for the immense kindness we've received from all beings, because all beings have been our mother, all beings have been our caregiver, all beings have been our father, our brother, our sister, all those things, right? All an extended kindness to us. So we have a sense of gratitude towards that, but we want to repay that kindness. So what's the best way to repay their care? So in the book it suggests, by recognize, if you want to repay the kindness of your mother or anybody who's been kind to you, recognize their suffering that they're going through, and then want to do something about it, step up, to liberate them, bring about a sense of liberation from their suffering. So just like here, you see Janice is holding the bottle, man, she's going through great difficulty here. When I read her biography, I read about the guy who she met and she fell in love with, but she went back to heroin and drinking, and he had got left on the side. But he tried to stop her, and as much as he could, and she did. She stopped using, she stopped drinking as much. They had a great time, and then she went back to America to sing and kept using, kept drinking, kept doing what she was doing. So he says we've got to recognize that the great ignorance that our mothers are under, the great not knowing, and how not knowing, doing the best they can and making all these mistakes. So if you look back over your life at your own parents' struggles, none of them were able to talk to you about, well, Eddie, this is how you can put an end to suffering. I remember when I was growing up, this is a really important thing to do. They didn't do that. Most of them tried to steer us into a career or, really had good wishes for our happy relationships and so forth. But it doesn't really work out, does it? It doesn't pan out. So you've got to recognize their ignorance, the struggles they undergo, and wish them to be free of these difficulties, wish them their well-being. And then as most of us have done as children, like we try to help our parents, and oftentimes we're pushed away, and then so we sort of give up on it. So let's do a quick meditation on this. So again, just get comfortable in your seat. And I want you to remember or recollect that the mind is a continuum. In other words, you had a mind of yesterday, you have the mind of today, and within a few moments, we're calling today is going to be the past mind, and you'll be in a present mind. Then your present mind will be lost, it'll become the past. So we've got future, present, past mind. It's a continuum. Now the clarity and awareness that constitute the mind do not stop at death. The mind stream continues to another rebirth. And in most rebirths, the vast majority of them, we've had parents. Since there is no beginning to our previous lives, because there is no beginning to consciousness, every sentient being at one time or another has been a parent to us. So take a moment to consider the kindness of your mother or of whoever took care of you when you were little. The parent fed you, cleaned you, clothed you, and protected you from danger when you were an infant. The parent loved you and they encouraged you. They rejoiced in your successes and they taught you skills to deal with difficulties, like tying shoelaces and taking jumpers off. They taught you to speak and how to cooperate and get along with others. They made sure you received an education. They did their best to help you grow up into being a responsible adult. And then much more. So recollect that kindness. Sort of feel it, try and feel the warmth. And that singular parent of this life, all other sentient beings have been just like that to you. They were similarly kind, similarly caring, loved you in the same way. So let a sense of wishing to repay that kindness arise in you. Others have been so kind, I wish to repay that kindness. Then breathe in deeply through your nostrils. Exhale. And so remember, just like us, our parents basically just wanted to be happy. And the only happiness they knew is what we call our worldly happiness, the happiness of the treadmill, hedonic happiness. They had no idea about liberation, enlightenment, and so forth. No idea. Most of them have no idea of internal cause and effect. So of course they suffer. But while they suffered, they tried to help us best they could. So these sort of steps and these sort of meditations are to lead us to what we call affectionate love, which is the fourth step. So here's a picture of Lou Reed and Miss Anderson.
Laurie Anderson.
Laurie Anderson, yeah. And I really like this because I've read Lou's biography too, and I know how much he suffered, and he was a little bit tough on people. But I'm so glad that he found love towards the end of his life, right? He found somebody that could get on with and talk and that they could get together. So we want to have this affectionate love is to so when I see people like this, and last night Miffy and I we watched a medical show. What's it called, Miffy?
Just stop the share, hun.
Yeah, it's called 24 Hours. What's the show we watched last night?
24 hours in emergency.
24 Hours in Emergency. Right? So I like watching that show because one of the things that really comes across is the kindness and affection nature of humans under great stress. I really like seeing how they care for each other. And at the end, like one of the guys, he was 87, really sick. They didn't expect him to live, but he did. And the last shot of him was walking with his two daughters, and they're holding his hand. Now, so that was one of the, wow, it's so great to see that a parent can sort of still have a good relationship with their children. That I feel great about that. Was my life wasn't much like that, but I'm very happy that others can be like that and be that way. The other one was like a man and his wife in their 70s holding hands. So that's another thing that I really like to see. I love to see the demonstration of affectionate love. Just sort of gives me hope for sentient beings. I go, wow, thank goodness that's still there. So, yeah, these past meditations are to lead us to this, a sense of feeling warm and affectionate towards others. In fact, to every other being. And we have to cultivate this. So, let's see. Well, I was going to tell you another story, but I can't. It's a little bit off. So let's have a look at one more meditation on the benefits of this affectionate love. So again, might take a minute. So this is how we cultivate something, right? We remind ourselves over it again and again, and we try to plant it in us so we become this way. So what are the benefits of affectionate love? Well, you will have less anger. Your jealousy will decrease. Arrogance will decrease. And resentment will decrease. So love makes the mind more peaceful. Loving others, loving yourself, will help you to restrain yourself from non-virtuous actions. Then your relationships with others will improve. You've got a sense of warmth towards others, a sense of affection towards others. So people and animals will feel very comfortable around you. You will be able to influence them. You will be able to take others into a positive direction in their life. And this is just all because you have the sense of warmth, the sense of warm affection, the sense of friendliness that we call love towards others and yourself. Again, exhale. Bring your attention back to the screen so we can see each other and keep going. And in fact, the great Arya being Kamala Shila said this. She said that moistened by love, your mind becomes like friable, fertile soil. It means it's very rich and be able to use it usefully. When you plant the seed of compassion, it grows easily and bountifully. Therefore, after you infuse your mind with love, cultivate compassion. So that's the last slide. We've got a few more, but this is wrapping it up. Is there anything anybody would like to say? Any more questions?
Just stop the share while you
Ask this question. Yep. So in a way, it's to wrap it up now. We've gone through these 4 steps and we've ended up with affectionate love. And there are many benefits for having it, and you can actually cultivate it. Next week, we'll go into how to cultivate this love a bit more, and then we'll come over to the objects of our compassion. Riffy?
Yeah, I just find it's become apparent to me just in these few steps that it's quite a mix between our feelings and emotions and our reasoning and logic and actually like getting with the program and going through this process, that it's quite a balance of both approaches. It's not just an emotive thing. Probably the emotion would come afterwards.
Yeah, well, this is what one of the major things this holiness says, about the positive mental qualities. They just don't come and go like the afflictive ones. The reason for that is because the foundation is intelligence, human intelligence, wisdom and reasoning that really gets into the emotion. If actually the emotions come out of that, it's the ground.
And so then they wouldn't fluctuate up and down like our kind of reactivity does.
Okay, our emotions here have good reasoning supporting them. Whereas if you have a look at any of the other afflictive, adventitious mental states, they require a lot of conditions to arise before they come up, and then they sort of like naturally do. So this is why I say cultivation is hard, Michael. You know, it's difficult. It requires work. It's like, yeah, you know, I've smoothed out the gardening, but now every day you've got to go out there and weed it and, you know, get the little shovel in there and then prune it. You know, you don't just sit back and go, great. Like, way to go, garden. And it's the same here. You know, we can't just let ourselves go, well, yeah, I got it. My mind will take care of the rest. No, it won't. It'll just go back to its normal way we've been. So again, you know, like this is how I address myself when I talk like that to myself. So it's a way of, you don't have to be hard on yourself. If it's not working, you just realize, yeah, I haven't done the work. I just haven't done it. You know, so if I want it to work, I'll have to do some work. I'll have to cultivate it. I'll have to do more than just read and agree. I'll have to do more thinking about this, making it more, you know, get the reasons and make them firm and stable, and then see what emotional states come out of that. Because, you know, we still got to work with the emotions, but here we want to work with positive emotions coming out of positive mental states. Really helpful, very helpful, intense emotional states, but coming out of reason. Reasoning, you know, focused on an ending of suffering, the development of all the good qualities. All the reasonings leading to those two things: decrease in suffering, increase in ability. Okay. So in this way, he's sort of saying, develop love first and then cultivate compassion on this. So our takeaways today are to try to foster the sense of impartiality. Now, like, it's often, if you really nut this through, this is where your first step will be. You know, you'll take refuge, you'll generate a mind of enlightenment, then you know, okay, I've got to get like an even mind first. I've got to sift out the attachment and the aversion. That's the start of it. I've got to have a workable soil for the garden I'm trying to grow, a workable mind to develop this mind. Then, you know, consider the kindness of others and then nurture that. You know, try and look at, you know, the people that you hold close, then move across the strangers, then move across the difficult people, then move across to all beings, animals. Consider how they've helped you again and again and again, and they're still doing that. Like I said, we cannot become enlightened, and our enlightenment depends upon others. We need an other to love. We need the other to be suffering. Then recollect how this love and the compassion are the foundations for our happiness. And that basically brings us to the end of our class today. We have some stuff to think about. So I think it was last week, Michael, you asked about, you know, if I had some reading, and I thought I put up here, but I thought it began on page, let me see. Yeah, so it begins on page 75 on that particular book, you know, in Praise of Great Compassion. So if you have this book, have a look from page 75 onwards, because that's the material I've covered. And other than that, any other book that you have, especially those written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, they're always insightful, they're always in depth, in good words. You know. So have a look at those. The meditations will all be up online. Just do what you can. So we've extended a little bit of effort, put some energy into this, some thinking into it, some wishing.
You've just missed the dedication verse. Oh.
Okay, but I did. So think, okay, this is called merit. Doesn't exist in truly, but does exist in mere name, and that's enough for it to function. Right? So it's dedicated. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And as long as space endures, as long as sentient beings abide, may I too remain to dispel the sorrows of the world. And wishing for Rinpoche's swift return, in holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you, I make this request. And if you have others that you care for, others who are sick, others who need your help, also dedicate for them.
Stop the share.
Remember this time? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for participating in the class and you putting your time for it, trying to do some good. So please stay alive till at least next week and consider impartiality and being kind. It's good. Okay, we'll see you again.